We got a few important news stories for Tesla, starting with a significant milestone that Tesla just reached, which I'm sure is going to be ignored by many investors, but it's actually a big deal for us long-term investors, so you definitely want to pay attention to that one. And then there's an analyst saying that we just got the dream news. So let's dive into all of these news stories, starting with this big announcement that Tesla just made. And you can see here, these Teslas are driving autonomously. We knew about that, but the thing is, Tesla just announced that over 50,000 driverless miles have been now accrued between California and Texas factories so far, and I haven't heard of a single incident, I haven't heard of a single car being scratched, I haven't heard of a single injury, I haven't heard of a single accident of any type from these vehicles, and 50,000 miles have been driven. So if you think about that intervention rate, that's better than Waymo. So far as I'm aware, there's no critical disengagements. Maybe there was one somewhere, but I have not heard about it, and I think there's a good chance we would have heard about something if something would have happened. Now, if there was an intervention of some kind, wouldn't the drones have sort of picked it up? Wouldn't have someone said something? I think there's a good chance someone would have said something. So for now, I would assume that all of these vehicles navigating these routes that Tesla has, there haven't been any critical disengagements. And Waymo's disengagement rate right now sits at 17,000 miles. Now, of course, these miles are in the city, and Tesla's miles are in a somewhat controlled environment. It's not exactly controlled, but it's not the most chaotic environment that you can put the vehicles in. But there's a huge difference between these two. Tesla is using only vision. There's no LiDAR. Do not underestimate what this announcement means. One way to look at this news is to say, well, this means basically nothing because it's a relatively closed environment, and while there are some cars from, let's say, outside, because you have people working in the factory that are going through the same roads, unplanned, unannounced, and the robotaxis need to navigate all of that. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is to see, oh, you're seeing all of this incredible performance here in China, and there are no interventions here. The car is working perfectly. It's navigating everything without any interventions safely. So this means that Tesla believes it's already good enough to deploy it on this small scale, and eventually is going to deploy it further into the wider Austin area, which is supposedly coming in Austin in June if there are no delays, and hopefully there are no delays, but typically with Tesla we expect delays, so if it's announced later in, let's say, July or August, okay, well, that's Tesla. But Tesla today feels comfortable enough to not even have a driver in the vehicle in the factories for the vehicle to drive to the destination. And here, look, Sawyer is saying just did a 50-mile trip on FSD supervised. Not a single disengagement. Roundabouts, complex heavy traffic situations, often on-ramps, dense urban areas, construction zones, etc. And it was raining the whole time. Wow. It handled it all smoothly and comfortably. But then you have critics for sure. Most other companies, Mercedes, Ford, Rivian, Chevy, also have level 2 self-driving. Tesla just pretends theirs is better while passing full liability onto their Guinea pig drivers. Yeah, right. Do they have vehicles that have driven 50,000 miles already within their factory areas to the destination where they are basically then loaded and get ready for shipment? No manufacturer is doing that, just with sensors on board that are actually on the vehicle. We have seen BMW pull off something like that, but they rely on sensors outside the vehicle, which is just a whole different game. That's so much easier to do. That autonomous system from BMW reminds me of these dominoes falling down in an autonomous way, completely not influenced by a very carefully designed path where they are supposed to fall. The BMW system is basically exactly like this. It's very carefully engineered to work only in their very specific circumstance. But Tesla system, with more improvements, is going to work everywhere, and it already works everywhere basically where regulations allow people to use the FSD system. Here in Canada, I can use it anywhere. In the US, I can use it anywhere. And it will only get better, and it's already good enough for Tesla to use it completely autonomously without a person in the vehicle, in the factory area. And look, while this environment is somewhat controlled, see, there's actually a bus over there. It's not perfectly controlled. I'm pretty sure over these 50,000 miles, there have been numerous edge cases that happened while these cars were driving. There are quite a few vehicles here, as you can see. And you got multiple lanes here. You got vehicles on one side, vehicles on another side, a lot of cones everywhere. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. See, there's a vehicle passing our Tesla here on the right side, and it's not a Tesla, by the way. It's not. And yet, everything is working fine, which is exactly what robotaxis eventually made by Tesla will do in the greater Austin area. And then after they expand into Austin, they're going to expand into other markets, and Tesla is going to repeat this over and over and over again, starting with just a few vehicles and then quickly eventually expanding. And when eventually people realize that what Tesla is doing here is not a trick, that this actually has value in the real world, as in by just making software better, and better, you can actually start deploying these vehicles as robotaxis anywhere in the United States of America. The moment the majority of investors realize that this is actually going to happen, oh, you just wait till what's going to happen to Tesla stock. Just go back to 2019, 2020, 2021, and you will see what's waiting for us. I believe we are going to repeat what happened back then. And here's something quite spectacular. Sawyer did a poll here. He got 11,000 votes. I assume that the absolute majority of those people, let's call them maybe 8,000, are Tesla stock investors, maybe more. And Sawyer asked, have you tried any version of Tesla's FSD supervised V13? If you are a Tesla stock investor and you're holding a substantial amount of money in Tesla stock and you haven't tried V13, come on. Are you really an investor? Or like, if you have any doubts about FSD, you definitely have to try. Now, if you are convinced already that it is going to work, okay, I can see why you may not want to try, because you can just look at people that you trust and you just listen to what they say. But 44% of the people said that they haven't tried the latest or any version of V13 FSD. Now, to be fair, the latest version of V12, if you do have it, which took me a few months to get after everyone was trying V13, is comparable to V13. It's not quite as good, but it's definitely comparable. So if you have that, then you can sort of get the feeling of what it feels like to actually have V13. It's not as good, but it is a big step forward from the previous V12 versions. I'm talking about the V12 version that's based on V13. What's also interesting is that these Cybertrucks that drive autonomously, they are emerging through a steep 17% grade to reach their destination. And I personally, like here, the visibility is not exactly great, but because you got cameras pointing in every direction, it's actually no issue. But as a person driving through there, I would be like, this is an annoying road to drive through. And the more I drive on FSD, the more I dread just the idea of ever having to do a long drive without FSD. Sure, I can do it, but it's like washing clothes without a washing machine. I mean, you can do it, but why? And a garage will no longer be needed in a self-driving feature. You'll be able to send your car out to work or send it out to go park and charge at a nearby station. One tap and it heads back to you before you need to leave. You'll still be able to keep your car in the garage if you want, but you could also repurpose that space and expand your living room or something instead. And now to the dream news. Dan I says that this is for all reciprocal tariffs, including China. Big tech and investors got the dream news. And of course, we Tesla stock investors are tech investors. Chips, smartphones, computers are now exempt from tariffs with China. The US big tech spoke and the White House made the right move at the right time. Massive relief for market and tech stocks into Sunday night. Also, electronic devices are exempt and their components including semiconductors, solar cells, flat panel TV displays, flash drives, and memory cards. Here's a full list of items that are exempt. So this is somewhat helpful for Tesla. One thing though that I was looking for was batteries. Are batteries exempt? Because we know that every single battery, at least as of this moment, or at least until now, maybe Tesla changed just in the last few days, but at least certainly before the tariffs, every single battery in Tesla's Megapacks came from China. Yep, and Sawyer also confirms that every one of those batteries is made in China and imported into the US. But it does not guarantee that there is not going to be an exemption for batteries or other components that Tesla needs from China. Then Ives continues here, the next street focus will be auto and auto parts tariffs and how this impacts Tesla and the three big from Detroit. He says, I continue to believe the best case is finished cars versus including parts will be big positive for auto sector if tariffs change. Once deals exemption starts, Street asks who's next. And here, this happened today. The president just said he's going to do something to help some of the car companies from the current tariff situation. They need a little bit of time, he says. And then yesterday morning, we had some comments from the United States Secretary of Commerce. And based on the comments, then I says the worst case scenario taken off the table now for big tech and tech stocks should be strong in our view, but more semi-tech tariffs and uncertainty abound in very confusing back and forth narrative. So chip tariffs are coming actually. Yeah, the House and Secretary of Commerce is saying that semiconductor tariffs will be coming over the next month or two, including smartphone and computer tariffs. It definitely makes sense what Farzad is saying here. One could make the argument Trump is doing what Elon does, but in reverse. Elon likes to delete everything, then add back what's absolutely needed, like the turn signal stock. And it has worked. It causes some annoyances and disappointments in the short term, but in the end, it actually works out really well. Extremely well. So well, in fact, that Tesla made the world's single best-selling vehicle, despite it being quite a bit more expensive than such vehicles like Toyota Camry. What the president has done is he has added everything and then he deletes. Then Ives continues here, in my view, the White House is now doing this the right way when it comes to the US tech. Do not burn the house down to meet the firefighters. Negotiations will happen, onshoring will start, as well as investments in the US, but we need a stable US tech industry and economy during this China game of poker. And then we need to talk about interest rates, because if interest rates are higher, then Tesla stock would be lower. Naturally, if interest rates are lower, Tesla stock goes up. Everyone agrees that increased tariffs are one-time price hikes as vendors raise prices to recover the amount of the tariff increase. The debate is what happens to future inflation expectations. If inflation is high, interest rates will go up. If inflation is low, interest rates can go down. That's why Fed officials are keeping a close eye on estimates of future inflation, and the latest ones show cause for concern. And the inflation numbers that the president is using to say that there is low inflation, well, all of these numbers came in before any of the tariffs started. So it's not really useful to know what the inflation was before the tariffs. We want to know what the inflation is going to be after the tariffs. The benchmark long-run inflation expectations gauge, which had already climbed to a 30-year high since Trump's election, soared higher still on Friday after Trump's sweeping global tariffs. That kind of mindset could help turn a one-time price hike from Trump's trade war into a more persistent inflationary expectation. The risk is all the greater because it's at a time when American households are still shaken by the post-pandemic price spike. A sharp rise in long-term inflation expectations would signal a loss of faith in the Fed's ability to bring inflation back to 2%. If consumers face tariff-led price hikes well above 3% over the next year, they may decide that's the new normal and build it into their everyday calculations. Workers would demand higher wages, while firms adjust their long-term pricing plans. Gary Vlad has more things to say here, and I think it's worth paying attention here because it does tell us a few interesting things about the future of interest rates. For those who believe that the president did a masterful job negotiating higher tariffs until his abrupt about-face on Wednesday, take a look at the University of Michigan's sentiment readings from early April published yesterday and tell me you're not concerned about the state of the consumer. April consumer sentiment fell to 50.8, its second lowest on record, on growing tariff concerns and soaring inflation expectations. Consumers expect inflation to rise by 4.4% per year over year, over the next 5 to 10 years, the highest since 1991, and by 6.7% in the coming year, the highest since 1981. So we are back in a territory where consumers are expecting prices to go up, inflation to go up. Gary Vlag continues, I still don't understand those who cheer Trump on as he pushed forward with the highest tariff increases in 100 years until the fixed income markets froze up, forcing him to make an abrupt U-turn before something broke. But this is the thing with everything. If you are negotiating something or you're doing something big, you're trying to push it to the very edge, and ideally you want to back off before something breaks really badly. And so far, I would say nothing has really broken, but there are signs that things were going in an interesting direction with the market dropping a lot in a single day, but then we had a stunning recovery. So nothing is really broken, at least not yet. Now, then the president post hit on Wednesday that Trump was backing off his plan to increase tariffs at the fastest rate in 100 years, and the S&P 500 soared 7% in 8 minutes Wednesday. Buy orders were pouring in at such a furious clip across all markets that S&P 500, the 570 billion ETF managed by State Street Advisors that tracks the S&P 500, was trading at a record 0.9% premium to the ETF's underlying net asset value. That is quite something. It's like buying $1,000 for $1,010. The euphoria didn't last long. By Thursday morning, stocks were sinking, and more importantly, treasury yields were soaring even after President Trump said it was their sudden surge that had prompted him to do an abrupt about-face and implement his 90-day reprieve on tariffs in the first place. The bond market was buckling, the VIX soared to its highest level since COVID, and the turmoil threatened to continue until the Treasury or Fed stepped in. By Friday, though, markets had stabilized and the VIX had receded, but this weekend traders were asking themselves what was the lasting damage to consumer and corporate investment spending and long-term 5 to 10-year consumer inflationary expectations, which on Friday reached their highest levels in 30 years. Gary Vlag is predicting that consumer investment spending is likely to be cut back, much like COVID, until the economy regains its momentum. With tensions rising between Taipei and Beijing, and with the US likely wanting to defend the island, I think it is wise to make sure that anything that is essential for military, the US does not need to get from China. For example, China produces 12.5 times more steel than the US. And during the 2020 crisis, we learned that a lot of pharmaceuticals and a lot of important items also only come from China. So if you have tensions rising, anything that's important for the military and for the survival of the country, I think all of that needs to be made outside of China for the US. Oh, and then check this out. Pay very close attention to what's about to happen because something big is about to happen. This vehicle is on FSD and it slowed down. And he said, FSD might have saved my family's lives today. I'm an attentive supervisor, but I can't say I noticed this moron before FSD did. It reacted instantly, slamming the brakes and avoided a dangerous accident perfectly. This would have been almost a guaranteed accident if FSD was not on. And maybe it would have not been a big accident, but if one of the vehicles spun out of control, you also have vehicles on the right side, and you have signs on the left side. This could have been very, very bad, and it's unclear. Were there any cars from behind? Oh, there is a camera showing what's behind. There's no one behind, so that's good. But this could have been very bad, and FSD avoided these bad situations. If you have FSD, if you have the latest version, it's definitely safer to drive with it on than without it. Now let's talk a little bit more about the stripped down Cybertruck. After thinking about it some more, I think the stripped down Cybertruck is pretty cool, says Omar. I'm going to order a fleet of 100 pickup trucks to use for my business. You know what I don't want or need on that truck? Fancy pants, vegan leather seats with holes in them for ventilation. Cloth seats with heating is fine. A fancy pants air suspension that allows me to raise and lower my truck. A normal suspension is fine for making deliveries. One less part that can break. A fancy pants tonneau cover that I can open and close from the truck. I will be leaving the bed open when it's loaded with deliveries and can use a manual tonneau if needed. A fancy pants hospital grade HEPA filter with bioweapon defense mode. A fancy pants screen in the back for watching Netflix. Nobody is sitting in the back of my delivery cars, just the drivers. A fancy pants 15 speaker audio system. 7 will be just fine. I just need my delivery drivers to be entertained, not have a spiritual experience. That's a good one. Fancy pants dual motor drivetrain that can go 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. My employees will wreck the truck. 6 seconds is plenty fast for trucks loaded with my product. Also, remember that the base Cybertruck was originally supposed to have just 250 miles of range. This one has 363 miles of range, which is dramatically better, of course. For towing and heavy hauling use cases, I would rather have the range than all the fancy features listed above. So given a choice between cutting back on the battery of some of the non-essentials, it actually makes sense to maximize the battery and cut cost out through other means. They also don't want anyone who can afford the all-wheel drive version. They don't want anyone to buy the cheaper version if they can afford the more expensive version, which helps keep profit margins higher and the average selling price higher. Also, this new Cybertruck is not shipping until June, and you don't want sales dying until then. So if they are going to decrease the price, of course, we are going to do it later. And so originally, the Cybertruck was supposed to cost $40,000. If you consider inflation and the purchasing power of $40,000 back in 2019, today, that would be equivalent to about $50,000. And then looking at the original range of the announcement, it was at about 250 miles. The 0 to 60 speed was 6.5 seconds. And looking at the stripped down Cybertruck, it does have 100 more miles of range. It is a tiny bit faster, but not by much. And it has steer-by-wire still. I would say that these improvements are worth maybe not $10,000, but it's definitely close to that. So $50,000 plus about, let's say, $10,000, and you got $60,000. And here you go. It's actually selling for $62,500. However, this is after the $7,500 federal tax credit. Before that, it's $70,000. But as Tesla ramps up production, I am pretty sure that the price is going to come down by a significant number. And that eventually, when considering inflation, I believe Tesla will deliver on its promise to deliver the Cybertruck at the price that they promised when considering inflation. Tesla's spring software update has been unveiled. It includes things like adaptive headlights for the US and the Canadian market, and many other smaller things. Nothing too crazy, but nice small improvements. There's actually one significant thing for safety though. Tesla will release sentry footage and dash cam with B-pillar included. This is a huge thing given the blind spots from this angle. Check this out. This is the first look at where Tesla's brand new Megapack factory will be in Texas. This will be Tesla's third Megapack factory in the world. Their Shanghai Megapack factory just started mass production a couple months ago. Oh wow, Polestar is closing 72% of its stores in China and scaling back its presence in the country, including exiting a sales and marketing joint venture with a local company due to low demand for its cars. Polestar only sold about 3,100 cars in 2025 over there. Wow. Up until sometime in March, a figure robot at BMW's South Carolina factory operated only during off hours, practicing picking up and placing parts in the plant's body shop, according to a BMW spokesperson, even though Adcock boasted in February that a fleet of figures, humanoid robots, were already performing end-to-end operations for the car maker. More recently, that same robot work has moved into live production hours, but involves a single figure robot performing the same limited chore, the spokesperson said. So yeah, there's a bit of exaggeration, I guess, that was used to describe the capabilities of the robot. But no doubt the future of humanoid robots is coming, is just a matter of when. And this is a huge deal for the US. NVIDIA has announced that for the first time, the company will produce NVIDIA AI supercomputers entirely in the US, which also in a way helps Tesla because Tesla needs a lot of supercomputers. And it's not just going to be NVIDIA. Check this out. NVIDIA Blackwell chips have started production at TSMC's chip plants in Phoenix, Arizona. So Phoenix, Arizona, TSMC, not just NVIDIA. NVIDIA is also building supercomputer manufacturing plants in Texas with Foxconn in Houston and with Wistron in Dallas. Mass production at both plants is expected to ramp up in the next 12 to 15 months. And within the next 4 years, NVIDIA plans to produce up to half a $500 billion of AI infrastructure in the US. And here's some good news. An analyst just reiterated an overweight rating on Tesla, saying the company has prioritized domestic sourcing and maintains a high degree of vertical integration, minimizing exposure to import tariffs. And I personally believe that Tesla stock is going to $1,000 per share, and then after that, well above it. But there is one investment that I'm telling my brothers to make instead. And that investment is investing in yourself. And my younger brothers who are teenagers have been asking me everything I know about money, and they're wondering how I'm doing these numbers. And I'm going to teach them everything I know about money during a 2-day event in Texas. There's a link down below if you'd like to learn more information about that. I will go through a few hundred things that I believe are the most important things to know for making money, increasing your income, having great financial success overall in life. I will start from the most important, and then I'll go to things that are also just as important. It's just that you have to know the first things first before you learn the more advanced things. So all of them are actually important. My name is Matt Pochis. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. And by the way, liking the video, that does make a difference. So those of you who click the like button, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for doing that. And I will see you in the next video. Wednesday, I may not be able to make a video. So the next video might be on Thursday, or if not Thursday, then Friday. I'll see you then. Thank you so much.